Oh yeah, I'm Aditya. I'm from Manipur. Before coming to UFP, I did my undergrad degree at Ashoka University, where I studied many subjects. Um, yeah, I studied literature, journalism, anthropology, creative writing. So I was like bit, in the air. So I was sort of looking to come to terms with the theory learning I had with some on-ground experience. So I sort of like saw like the UFP and that was. Um, Actually, I was referred to it by a friend in college who'd seen their senior come for the fellowship. I had some sort of like confusion about my career trajectory after like college, because I was a very like sort of theory based uh, student in college, and I had worked in academia and a lot of things, but I realized that moving forward, since my interest in anthropology picked up really well, I'd have to have some sort of like a grounding in like the field or something. So I thought the component at UFP would help. I would say yes to an extent, because like I think I got like an overall understanding of like how things work in the urban. So it was not like unidimensional or sort of like one way focused with things. So that way I think I learned like for example the commons. We learned planning, economy, governance. So I understood sort of like the intersection between a lot of things in the urban. So whereas like you'd see a problem from a very sort of like a minor standpoint, I was able to relate the stakeholders and all of these things in it. It didn't, because I work primarily in the region of the Northeast, and not necessarily there was like a explicit urban component to it. So I was working with conflict, but I think that was my whole gig with coming to the UFP, is to understand the inception of urban spaces. So in that way, I think it was more driven by motivation than like sort of like an alignment with my academic background. Oh yeah, quite honestly, like I was really scared of interviews before coming here, or in general, like talking about things, or even working in groups and all of that. But I think like the sort of necessity to like do it here at the UFP, and sort of having people from very different academic backgrounds, and you can see that they're also trying to sort of come to terms with adjusting with people from sort of like a different experience. I think that helped me a lot. Often like in college, of course you'd have like presentations, but I'd only contribute from the perspective of like what I knew, and we'd have like work divided. But I think here I worked on like other skills, like I mean like both like qualitative, quantitative, and a lot of these things. And in addition to that, I was like really like stupid at like quantitative data. But then after coming here, I guess like I have improved a little, if not too much. I think the first class we had in the Commons, which was I think Gautam was teaching us about identity, and in that class we sort of learned how to read data and sort of make a very let's say theoretical argument. Say for example, we were like learning about caste through like tables, and usually often you would not find the mention of caste, and in the city as well. So I thought that was really eye opening, that you could make these like parallels with things that are only depicted in numbers, and sort of like talk about the real world and see like how it is. The UFP is quite balanced. Again, like what you take out of it is again individual experiences. That is like what where you come from, what your field is, and like how much you understand when a certain person teaches a certain topic in a certain class. But I think in an overall general sense of the idea, I found it quite balanced, and it was approachable from like sort of like various like aspects. So yeah, it was quite balanced. I have to say that the practica was quite enriching, although again, like you'd have conflicts and you'd have to talk to people about like their opinions, sort of convince them of your opinions and all of that. But I think just the general idea of taking something very abstract and sort of trying to turn into something that is legible for like everybody, I think that was a great experience. I had no, like, I was in a college, like, in the middle of nowhere, like, studying. I mean, it was a great college, but whatever I could study in, like, books and, like, whatever I read, I could not put a finger on the ground. So I think for me personally, this, I'm speaking from personal experience, I think it was like extremely important for me to like be out there and like see things I have like learnt about and sort of read about, because otherwise like you will not be able to find the gaps between what you read and what you see, because like what you read is not canon and what you see is like the real thing, right? To me, I don't belong to the urban, like I don't come from the urban, like I had no specific interest in it and all of that. But to me, the fact that there was such a program where I would be able to sort of answer my own questions about the rapid increase of the urban, because it's inevitable, and have a space where I can come and see how things work and how things sort of like happen. I would say like it is quite important, especially in a country like ours, because like I mean it's like rapidly expanding, and there are like new like avenues and scopes to like study everywhere. So yeah. Oh, the internship program was quite cool because there were few glitches here and there, and some people had to go through it. But I was looking for a very specific thing, which honestly was not like the most like directly connected to the UFP. But I think I had good mentors who sort of were able to find that alignment and like figure out a space for me. So yeah, I think like applications were taken. We were directed well, I would say, to a certain extent, and our communication and all of that was pretty good for me personally. Yeah, because I only applied to two places, and yeah, and like I swear to God, like at so many chances, I was like, no, I'm not gonna apply. I just did two, and I got two. So yeah. So honestly, after all this talk about the ground, I ended up working on a project on literature review, which is kind of hilarious. But I guess it had to be that way. That's the only thing I wanted to do. So the project I'm working on is a literature review of like the social determinants of malnutrition among like school children in urban area. So we'll basically take a look at what kind of like work has been done in the urban area about like something as like vital as malnutrition, and sort of try to figure out like the gaps, and like I don't know, man. It's just like very dense. It's very academic. It's very on paper. But in a way, I think like towards the end of the program, having done a lot of groundwork, I think it's also good to go back to theory in that sense. So I mean, I don't have any complaints about it. I think in terms of diversity on a relative scale, yes. Like because again, like been to many institutes, like been to like foot talks, like talk, whatever, like sports and all of that. I think UFP was one of the more sort of like diverse spaces in terms of like from what I've seen, like caste, class, again gender also, and but I think one thing, and people, I always pick this up, but I think like in a certain sort of like a one thing we also like sort of don't focus on or sort of give enough attention to is the aspect of region in India. And for me to have come from Manipur and sort of like try to find parallels with some like people or things or like the kind of topics people talked about, I think it's quite important to have like a diversity which spreads out evenly. So in the words of my fellow friend from Assam, the only one from the Northeast, she said representation matters. So like, I guess like that's it. Otherwise, like I mean, it was like better, but I mean, I think it could still do like much better. Yeah. I would say the masterclass to a certain extent was extremely diverse, and uh, I mean, I think it is quite like, I mean, I don't think there's any need to say that like everybody found it like on a different aspect or a scale of like, new learnings. So even in like topics that I might have not been interested in like the highest sense, I think I was able to get a sense of like how things were and all of that. So I think the masterclass aspect of the UFP was really enriching for me, especially like the 3 4 master classes we had, like two in the beginning and like I think two towards the end. So I would say like, I mean, that is the one event that struck out for me. I mean, I'd say like to like especially like people who are sort of like scared of the financial aspect of things. I'd say like they should like really give it a shot, because like I think the UFP sort of covered me quite well with regards to that. And also to people who are sort of on the edge about like their background aligning with the UFP, or sort of like, in terms of language or the form they work with, say like poetry and all that, I don't think people should hesitate based on that, because I've seen like here as well as me, like coming from like very different backgrounds and applying using like very different forms of communication and languages, and like still sort of like being able to make it and have like a good experience. So with regards to that, yeah,